Have you ever considered living in a cow town? It's a small town in Montana that specializes in cattle. Well, you're going to want to watch this video. This is on the community of Deer Lodge. If you're new to the channel, this is the Montana Real Estate Channel, and I'm Craig Siphers. I work with my real estate daughter, Erica, with Siphers Family Real Estate. We've been helping folks secure their piece of Montana since 1966, and we'd love to be able to help you. So in this video, we're going to go around the community of Deer Lodge, Montana, talk about some of the neighborhoods, some of the history, talk about some of the price points of real estate that you might encounter in Deer Lodge. And if you have not subscribed before, you'll want to tap that logo down there on the lower right hand side of your screen so you're notified whenever we come out with a new video on communities in Montana discussing real estate, lifestyle, culture, landmarks, and landscapes. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at Deer Lodge, Montana. The city of Deer Lodge is in the Deer Lodge Valley of western Montana, and it sits in the shadow of the Pintler Range in the Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness. Here in the wilderness, you can find Mount Powell, you can find Deer Lodge Mountain. Now, the Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness is a 158,000-acre wilderness spanning portions of the Beaverhead and Deer Lodge National Forests. And now this is, for as long back as anyone can remember, this has been cattle country. And if you'll stay with us until the end of the video, we'll share some fascinating facts and stories of the Old West and cowboys and cattle from Deer Lodge. So hang in there with us. You know, Deer Lodge was originally known as Spanish Forks, and it was a little community that grew up around the ranch operations of a French-Canadian named Johnny Grant. And we'll talk more about Johnny later. But let's check out some of the real estate in the Deer Lodge area. Now, originally known as Spanish Forks, it changed the name up to Cottonwood at some point, and then in 1888 the city of Deer Lodge was incorporated, and it's still cattle country, as you can see in this video. And you can find some ranches for sale in this wide open space. And to give you a bit of an idea, there was a 22-acre property with a 1,680 square foot manufactured home that recently sold out here on Sam Beck Road, and that property sold for 500, and it was listed for 550,000, and it sold for 450,000, and that was just recently. And now there are some other smaller rural properties. As an example, we'll see one coming up here that was on the southeast of town. Little home that was built in 1951. It was 2,128 square feet on 1.82 acres, and it sold for 365,000. Now these are a little larger parcels, but there's some around here that are 30-acre parcels. This is the road going out to the airport, a 156-acre parcel. And then when we get into town, there's some new items. This is just off of I-90. And they're anywhere from 1,500 to 2,400 square feet on 1/3 acre lots. And they're listed between 900 and 1.3 million. Now, this is Warren Acre subdivision, and these are listed by Century 21 out of Butte, and the listing information is going to be in the description. But I'd like to get some feedback. Give us a comment about what you think about the pricing on these new houses that are, around $1 million in Deer Lodge. So give us some comments, and maybe we can have a little bit of discussion about that. Well, then as we come into town, we'll have the Powell County Fairgrounds in Little Joe Park. This is where the Tri-County Fair takes place in Deer Lodge, and that's for Granite County, Deer Lodge County and Powell County all participate in the Tri-County Fair, and we've got some athletic fields coming up. This is on the west side of town, coming into town, and then we're going to be in the Larrabee addition to Deer Lodge with various aged homes from the early 1900s to the 1920s. And then this yellow home that we see here was built in 1894, and it's a 325 square foot home with a stone foundation. And the homes in this part of town range in size from 1,300 to 1,700 square feet and sell anywhere from 215 to 255,000 typically. These lots are roughly on 1,700 square foot lots down to as little as a quarter acre. And then we'll see here in this part of town, we've got a manufactured, a mobile home park, which is common in most communities in rural Montana. And then once in a while, we'll have some infill that you'll see with homes as late as 1977. And you'll see that we're heading back down California Street past our historic yellow home here at the end of the block. And you can see, examples like this home here, which is clearly newer. And then we saw these homes earlier. When we come around the corner, we've got the Community of Christ Church. And as we go down the street here, we'll also pick up the Powell County Courthouse. And the Powell County Courthouse was built in 1921, and city or the county offices and the county commissioners, etc. And then we also have our right next to it, we have the Powell County Sheriff's Office as well, and kind of the Justice Center there in Powell County. Now, just behind the courthouse and around the corner is St. James Episcopal Church. So that was built in 1940, and the newer portion next to it was built in 1950. Now, we'll see at the end of the street here, this is Les Schwab Tire. It's a regional tire store. And as we turn onto Main Street, we're going to see the Deer Lodge City Hall that was built in 1900. And it has a nice little clock on top of it you can't see in that video. But this is the old historic downtown. And we'll take a drive through that here in a bit. But we're going to go back into the residential area to the original town site of Deer Lodge. And homes in here started being built in the early 1900s. And you can also see that there's been some infill as well. But right here at the end of the block is a 4,600 square foot historical home that was built in 1892. And it was on the market for a number of years at $750,000. And I noted in the record that from the MLS that it expired, but that kind of gives you an idea of what you might be able to pick up there. They're on the original town site. We've got homes that have, a 1,385 square foot home that was built in 1920 that sold for $240,000 in this area. Now, this is the Powell County High School, and according to niche.com, the student population in grades 9 through 12 is 186 total pupils, and they enjoy a 90% graduation rate, and it's a student-to-teacher ratio of 11-to-1. Now, after leaving the original town site of Deer Lodge, we go into several different additions. And this particular one is called the Claggett-Dixon edition. And the large white house that you see right there is a 4,400 square foot, 3-bedroom, 4.5 bath structure that was built in 1897. So you can clearly see there's some real history here in terms of architecture. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into what's known as the Brookside Edition. And when we look here at this bungalow that you see right here, it was assessed at around $320,000. It was built in 1923, has 4 bedrooms and 2 full baths in 2,354 square feet on a 1.5 stories, and it does have a full basement. Now, a home recently sold in the Brookside Edition that was built in 1910 was on a 1/3 of an acre lot, had 1,760 square feet, and it sold for $375,000. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Bildenberg Albee Edition. And we have some relatively newer homes. When I say relatively newer, I mean we've got some homes that were built in the late 50s. And there was one recently in here that sold for $337,000. It was 1,354 square foot home. You've got a little bit of a mix there. You've got your manufactured home, and you can see we're getting kind of on the outskirts of town in this particular neighborhood. Now we can see that we've got some homes here that were built in the mid-1950s, and they're around 1,500 square feet, and they will sell in this area, which is the College Edition, in the mid-300s to the mid-400,000s, depending on the size of the home. So these are a little bit newer homes in the Deer Lodge area. Now we move back into the Claggett-Dixon Edition, where a home recently sold in this neighborhood for $317,000. It was built in 1947. It was a 3-bed, 3-bath, nearly 2,500 square feet. Now we have the Cottonwood City Park next to the E.F. Duvall Junior High. And according to niche.com, that E.F. Duvall Junior High has 90 students in it. In grades 7 and 8, with a student-teacher ratio of 13:1. To Main Street, we have the Last Spike Monument commemorating the last spike of the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and Pacific Railroad's Puget Sound extension, which is better known as the Milwaukee Road, and it connected Chicago to Seattle. And the spike was driven on May 19th, 1909, about 17 miles west of here. Now, this is historic Main Street with the Powell County Museum housed in a structure that was built in 1918. And we see the Frontier Montana Museum. All of this is across from the old state prison. And we also see down here the Penn Gallery that is housed in another building right here that was constructed in 1918. Now, of course, we mentioned about the Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul, and the Pacific Railroads going through this. And Deer Lodge is the county seat for Powell County. It has a population of 2,938 as of the 2020 census. So we also on Main Street have, a hotel, motel, hospitality operation, and then we've got a local grocery store. We're not too awful far from Missoula if you need to get into the big box stores. And this building coming up here is, this is an apartment complex that was built in 1910. So that was pretty nice digs back in the day, and we've got some additional residential properties as well as businesses housed in these various properties along Main Street. So we're going to take another drive up Main Street on the other side so you can see some of the historical buildings there, and we can talk a little bit about some of the elements of Deer Lodge. And so let's do that. Now here's our local fire department for our protection, and the Napa Auto Store. Now we're going to go up here and take a little trip down Main Street and take a look at the other side of Main Street. It's jam-packed full of all sorts of historic structures, and it starts right here on the corner with the City Hall, and the old Hotel Deer Lodge looks a little rough for wear right now, and I don't know what kind of plans might be afoot for that, because there are some really well done buildings, renovated here on Main Street, including the old Rialto Theater. That was built in 1920, and next to that is the People's Bank of Deer Lodge, which was built in 1921. Now, Deer Lodge is home to the Montana State Prison, the men's correctional facility. And the current facility was built between 1974 and 1979. And it's located on 33,000 acres, 3 miles outside of town. But Deer Lodge originally was the Montana Territorial Prison from 1871 to 1889, when Montana became a state. And then it continued as the state penal institution from 1889 until 1979. Then it's coming up here, and you'll see it. And if you can imagine this being a prison that was occupied and used as the state prison up until 1979, really some pretty rough accommodations there. Of course, prison's not supposed to be easy, but and now this has been used for a number of movies since. And we just went past also the Cell Block Tavern that's owned by our friend Carrie Lease, and we highly recommend, when you're in Deer Lodge, go by the Cell Block Tavern just right there across the street from the old Montana State Prison. So here we are at the Grant-Kohrs Ranch, just outside Deer Lodge. So we're going to take a little quick tour of the ranch. This was from the 1880s. And as we go through the ranch, I'll talk a little bit about Grant-Kohrs. Now, we told you that we would give you something special at the end of the video if you stayed with us, and we're going to do that now and share with you a little bit of the history of Montana and the cattle world back in the 1800s. And this is a fascinating story. Originally, this ranch, the Grant-Kohrs Ranch, which I just mentioned, was started by Canadian fur trader Johnny Grant in 1862, and later expanded by cattle baron Conrad Kohrs. But Johnny started grazing cattle along the banks of the Clark Fork River in 1857, if you can believe that, and he eventually settled the little settlement there permanently, and convinced settlers and traders to settle around him, forming a little town of Cottonwood. And he was successful, but when gold was found in the area, miners started moving in, and they ended up taking advantage of the French Canadian who only spoke French. So he sold out to cattle baron Conrad Burns for $19,200, and he moved back to Canada and called it quits. Now, Conrad Kohrs was born in 1835 in what is now Germany's Holstein province, and he came to the U.S. at the age of 22 with gold fever, but he made his money selling beef to the miners. Then he built his cattle operation up to 50,000 head of cattle, grazing some 10 million acres. So if you can imagine trying to wrangle cattle over that amount of ground. Now that's what you call a ranch. Now, then what happened is the devastating winter of 1886 to 1887. And you might remember the Charlie Russell painting where it's just a sketch about the cow that's on the range that's just nothing but skin and bones. it left half the cattle population dead. But with proper financing and barbed wire, and Kohrs' brother-in-law, John Bildenberg, if you remember, there was the Bildenberg addition, there's a Bildenberg Street there in Deer Lodge. They survived and then thrived, and today the Grant-Kohrs Ranch is operated by the National Park Service. And it's just a really interesting area. It's got a lot of interpretation areas. It's got all the buildings of the ranch. And of course, what was happening is that if you could get your cattle, which you could get $2 a cow for on the range, you might be able to, if you could get them to Chicago, they'd be worth $20 a piece. And so the cattle industry became very, very lucrative. And so we hope you enjoyed this video on Deer Lodge, Montana. Please, if you liked it, share and subscribe. And until next time, from Siphers Family Real Estate, thanks for watching, and look for our next video on Western Montana real estate, lifestyle, and culture.